innovators. I'm Todd Weyandt, and welcome to the Bridging the Gap podcast presented by Applied Software. You're invited to join our MEP and construction innovation adventure with a mission to propel this great industry forward. My guest today is Cory Borchardt, Senior Vice President of Operations at Fisk Electric. With over 20 plus years of electrical construction experience, Cory brings an innovative approach to construction, utilizing prefabrication, technology, and project management skills to drive operational excellence. Welcome to the show, Cory.
Thanks for having me, Todd.
Looking forward to this. So let's start with how you got into the construction industry.
By accident, actually. I thought I wanted to be an engineer when I grew up. I went to Michigan Tech for engineering, and I really gravitated to the more hands-on stuff. And I started working for a contractor when I was still in college, and accepted an offer with them after college, and it just spiraled out of control from there. Traveling around the country, building big projects, working for some big contractors, doing some really cool stuff. And I really like being part of these big projects, seeing a big tunnel project or a manufacturing facility or a power plant being built, getting that conclusion of starting something and finishing it is what really drew me to construction. And I think trying to get younger kids into construction today, and some of the younger generation that really don't see construction as a field, trying to sell that piece to them of seeing something finish is a really good strategy to get people interested.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I always start off with how people got into the industry because I think it's fascinating. There's a couple tracks that seem common. It's either the family-owned business or there's the engineer turned construction.
Yeah. You mean you got into construction you got into it on purpose? You mean you did it without being forced into it? Yeah. So some of us just don't have any other choice, but in my case, I did choose to get into construction.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, leaning into some on how to attract the younger generation, it's a fun topic to kind of unpack. We won't necessarily have to spend a ton of time there on this conversation, but what do you see as kind of that main grip? What about seeing that come to life is gripping the younger generation right now?
It is a problem in the industry. It's not just in the electrical trades. It's in all trades are facing the same problem. We're competing with the perception of that you have to go to college to make a good living. And it's a real problem. I think the trades are starting to get more organized, and they're starting to sell themselves a little bit better. There's some great initiatives going on in different parts of the country with the trades to attract the younger workforce. And it gets back to education of the high schools and the high school level counselors to get them up to speed on this. But really, we're seeing this really weird paradigm in the workforce. And it kind of ties into what we're going to talk about today with technology, is that you have the little bit older generations that are more experienced that you need on the project to because of their experience and their ability to build the projects and knowing the sequence and how to get to the finish line. And then you got the young generation that can work the technology and understand the technology that is being introduced into the workforce, and bringing those two groups together and trying to get them to learn from each other has really been the interesting dynamic over the last couple of years with the trades. And I know from talking to other executives in the industry that we all struggle with the same thing, and it's attracting the young people and keeping them interested and trying to matriculate them into the workforce with that older generation that is very quick to say, well, this is the way we always did it and it was fine. It worked. It worked for 50 years. Why are we going to do it different? It's a very, very unique time in the construction world, trying to see that go together. And then the other challenge is the management teams at a lot of these contractors are transitioning to a more young and up and coming group in their senior management team. And that's, myself included, being on a management team with the average, if you take myself out of it, the average age is 65 or 63. And that becomes an issue when you're talking about technology sometimes, is trying to stay in front of those things. Not that the other generation can't embrace the technology and be part of it, but they're maybe not as quick to push for it as some of the younger people coming into the trades.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting time in construction because there's a lot of complexities of just dynamics going into it, not to mention the complexities of an actual project. But
right.
You have, I'm probably a broken record to our regular listeners, but I think that there's a big marketing problem in construction, and that we do a really bad job telling our stories to those outside of the industry. We probably do a bad job to those inside the industry too, but sharing the cool tech and the innovation that is actually already here in the industry, we let other people drive our narrative outside of the construction's a menial job that you don't need the education for. And that's just, there's not true. There's so much tech and smart people in this space. We just don't tell that story well enough.
Exactly. And I got to tell you, the number of extremely talented tradesmen that are doing this construction work will blow your mind. And when I say talented, I'm creative artists, tech savvy. We got electricians that do programming on the side for fun, that moonlight as app developers.
I mean,
they're brilliant people, and they're doing construction, and they're bringing a very unique dynamic to the workplace.
Yeah. I think another dynamic that's interesting, you brought it up, is that with that intergenerational play, I'm a huge fan of reverse mentoring, of pairing the older person with a younger person. So you get that real world expertise matched with the people that are more native to technology, and both can learn and grow with each other on areas of weakness. And I think that just helps the company tremendously.
Right. I think any good training plan includes that two-way mentoring, or some type of, it's almost like you're kind of checking two boxes, right? With the younger people, when you give them that opportunity to mentor someone or teach someone, they feel more like part of the team, and more like a bigger role, more important, and it keeps them engaged, it keeps them excited. And the person receiving that mentoring or that training needs it. They don't know they need it, but they need it just as much as the young guy that's getting mentored on the 40 years experience that he doesn't have.
Right.
So
right. Yeah. And I think that the trick of it is, a lot of the processes did work for 40 years. And so I can appreciate the people that are saying, well, it's worked for this long, why do we need to change? But the simple fact of it is that construction now and moving forward in the next decade is not the construction industry that has been.
Yeah.
So you're going to need to adapt.
It looks different, right?
Yeah.
15 years ago or 20 years ago, when I started in the business, you would get a roll of drawings in the mail. The FedEx truck would back up and unload, 10, 15 packages of drawings, and half of them were bids and half of them were updates to projects you already had. And someone spent all day sorting those drawings and making copies of those drawings and figuring out where they go.
Yeah.
And you had 2 months to bid a $20 million project for an electrical project. And now, and you only got what you needed to bid the job. They didn't send you everything because they'd have to kill a whole rainforest to print everything. and now you get a link and an email, and they give you access to every document electronically, and they are expecting you to do something with it, review it, acknowledge it, include it in your bid. And instead of giving you 2 months, you get 2 weeks. If you're doing it the same way, if you're going to that link and you're printing off every document to review it, you physically don't have the time to do the bid. You don't even have time to print all the documents and get them organized.
Right.
in a reasonable amount of time, much less get the bid or the estimate done and back to the general contractor. So a lot of the construction practices, are the same. We still wire a white fixture the same way, or pour a concrete slab the same way, but the way we get there, the way that we figure out where it goes and how many we need is very different today than it was 15 or 20 years ago.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's lean into ConTech. So as an executive, how do you really analyze the ROI of ConTech to figure out the right tech stack that your company needs?
Yeah, it's a bigger part of my job today than I ever expected it to be. I'm having conversations about machine learning and cloud storage and data, that I never thought a construction company would be thinking about. And it's software overload, it's information overload. And when you go to a trade show now, you go to a NECA or MCA event, and a good percentage of the vendors that are there are going to be some type of software company. And it's come a long way. 5 years ago, you were a very early adopter of these things. You probably got in on the development, and now a lot of these things are developed. And we're even seeing some of these companies go public, which really gives them, it's a real business. If you can take a startup construction software company and take it into a public company, it's a real business. There's something there. So as an executive, you're getting all these things coming to you, and you're looking at them and you're thinking, man, that's really cool. But then you step back and you say, okay, what am I really going to do with this? It's great. It's great stuff. It all works. It all does something. It solves some problem, but maybe it's not the right problem for your organization. So the approach that we've taken and I've taken in the past is, when we're looking at technology, is really putting yourself in the field position's shoes. We're trying to embrace technology that will streamline their day. It's great to have dashboards. It's great to have reports. It's great to have, you have to have an ERP, accounting software. You have to have all these things, and that's all important. But an electrician or a plumber or a sheet metal guy, they don't care what software you run for your accounting, just so their check comes. They right. Never know. But if you can find a software that takes their day and eliminates a pain point in their day, or streamlines a process, or gives them a tool or access to more information, that's the software you want to focus on. That's the technology you want to focus on. And trying to always take the assumption that one size fits all is the other pitfall that a lot of people fall into, and they'll adopt something and say, this will work for everybody, and we're going to force everybody to use it. And then a year down the road, after you're heavily invested in servers and training and consultants to integrate, you realize that you're now paying people to do stuff twice, because you made everyone in your organization be part of this, and you find out that they're still having to do it a different way. And then you're paying somebody to key it into a software so that someone can get a report over here or a dashboard over here. And that's frustrating as an executive to see all that money being spent, and effort and time and resources, to not really get any return on that investment. And to me, as an MEP sub, the return on the investment is in the field. It's the guys that are doing the work more efficiently, with less rework, with more consistency and better productivity.
I love that you guys focus in on the field, because I feel like that can, when we start talking about ConTech, the field oftentimes can get kind of overlooked, and it's about what's making the office and the back end more efficient, and not through the lens of the field. So I think that's great. But how do you judge software then through the prism of, this is going to make a day in the life of a contractor easier and not create that extra work?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's tough. It's a complex question. And it starts with really identifying and knowing what problem you're trying to solve. Are you what are you trying to solve with this software? And then once there might be several problems that a software solves. And then you have to take a step back and say, well, how do we do it today? And what's it going to look like if we implement this software? And from there, you try to put yourself in the field of that 30-year salty construction electrician to think about how it impacts him. And will he be able to use it? Is it intuitive enough for him to use when the process is done? Is it something that's repeatable for him? Is it something that is going to make his day easier? So there's a few things that we've seen come into the industry that when you roll it out to your people, they're high-fiving. There's when we got our first Trimble unit and we did training for people, those guys were high-fiving and talking about it. And I mean, they were excited because they seen, man, this is really going to move the needle on a job. Not only is it going to be quicker, but it's going to be more accurate. We're not going to have to go back. We're not going to have to send 3 guys with a tape measure and a string and a plumb bob to lay out all these things. And after the rebar's done, go back and double check it. They've seen some real efficiency there. And as that's one of the real first technology things that really got embedded in construction. And then you started seeing things like iPads and tablet computers and smartphones coming in the mix. And you seen a lot of guys carrying them, but you didn't see a lot of things happening with them. They were used for taking pictures, and they were great for Netflix at lunchtime, and they played solitaire during break time, and they could get their email, but they weren't really using it as a construction tool. Now there's tools out there that allow, they get the drawings real time, same time that the field engineer gets them in the office, the foreman's got them. They can mark something up real time and get it out to the field. And some of those technology adoptions, the Blue Beams and the Dados and those type of products that have been introduced, those are high five situations with the field guys where they're getting this information quickly, more streamlined, and it's intuitive for them. The big thing that we're always looking at is how much admin work does it take to make this problem go away. So it's great if you spend $1 million on a software to just add another 4 admin people to your staff to make it work. That doesn't really solve the problem, does it? So that's kind of the balance you got to find is, okay, we're going to make this work. It's going to streamline this, and we're going to be able to repeat it and administer it in a way that it's going to be a long-term solution.
Yeah. So I'm interested that how do you communicate to the field guys that they're going to get the needed information at the right time in the way they want it, they'll understand, and then they'll use it and get buy-in?
Yeah. So sometimes you communicate that with a baseball bat, quite frankly. Other times it's open, but again, the way that we're doing the work is changed, with more prefab, more assemblies, more kits, more things being introduced into it. It's more important for that to be identified earlier in the job and for the field staff to be aware of what that is earlier in the job. So as we're prefabbing things or deciding what we're going to prefab and we're modeling the project, the field supervision needs to be part of that. And those are the interactions where you feel like you won. It's working when your foreman has your BIM modeler or your designer on speed dial, and he calls him. He doesn't call the project manager. He doesn't call the superintendent. He doesn't call the estimator. He calls the modeler to get answers. He calls the modeler to give him a suggestion on how to do it better. That's when you won. That's when you know that they bought into the system. They're getting what they need, and they're part of the solution by giving feedback and communicating with that modeler. If the modeler never hears from the field, chances are they're not using it. They're not using it to the full extent. They might be using it, but they're not using it the way that they could use it. to the fullest
Right.
extent.
Yeah, no, that's a great gut check. So I'd love for you to kind of share your story then on your prefab journey. What was the origin of that journey like? And then what did you do to kind of bring that on and embrace it, make it a reality?
Yeah. So for me, I was fortunate enough to really get involved with prefab very early, what I would consider early for the kind of evolution of prefab in construction. And the challenge early was it was also the early time for modeling. So BIM modeling was starting to become more prevalent. A lot of time it was just an add-on to the engineering process so that the owner had got a cool picture and they could do a walkthrough before it was built, and that, you know, they could show people. It wasn't really being used for much beyond that. So when we initially embarked on doing prefab, we weren't using the model to create any type of prefab assemblies. We're still relying on the two-dimensional drawings, some standard prefab details that we would build up. And I would say that was prefab 1.0. We were doing the simple stuff like wall rough in, pre-cut and strut supports, maybe doing pre-bends for conduit runs, things of that nature. And the mechanical guys were ahead of the electrical guys. They were already spooling conduit, off of their 2D drawings, between their ISOs and their layout drawings. They're already spooling stuff, and that's a form of prefabrication. Well, as the evolution of the model grew, the model became the source of truth, more and more the source of truth. And we've seen the 2D drawings now being developed from the model, not the other way around. And what that kind of changed was that you had to integrate the model process into your prefab. And that's when I call it prefab 2.0. That's when you're building racks, attaching the pipes, making 20, 40, 60-foot sections that you can ship on a truck, lifting them in with a crane or a forklift, and kind of creating this jigsaw puzzle of pieces that are just assembled. That requires a lot of coordination, not only with your own people, and your own BIM designers, but also with the rest of the trades. And if that model is a source of truth, everyone can do this. Everyone can do their prefab in a very confident way to know that it's going to work. You're going to have your glitches, but you have a sense of it's going to work. So the more that the modeling process evolves, the more sophisticated we're able to get with our prefab. And there's tools out there now, like Evolve. MEP is one of those tools that's kind of changed the way that we think about what we can prefab, and it's changed the level of detail that we're putting into our model because it's more efficient using that tool to get that information into the model, which then creates this prefab details for you. And the field guys see drawings and models with more detail, which makes it easier to relate. It makes it easier to prefab, and then it makes it easier to adhere to, and keeping it that source of truth on the job. That's always the challenge, is keeping something as your main source of truth. It happens on jobs where the model gets away from the job, and as far as the building of the model, and then they revert back to the 2D drawings, and then they just as-built the 2D drawings, and eventually when the job's done, they go back and fix the model. When that happens, that's a dangerous time to be in the electrical trade, because you've already built a lot of your prefab based on the model and everybody following the model. And now they're not following the model. And you're end up doing rework, or you're having these tough conversations with your customer probably that, hey, you're causing me to rework because this guy didn't put this in the right way, or this dimension is off, or this hanger is in the wrong spot, or this ductwork isn't where it's supposed to be, or sprinkler head. So there's a lot of things that can go sideways when we get away from that model. So back to your original question, the evolution of prefab has really followed that BIM model in a lot of cases. And when you look at some of the bigger contractors across the country that are doing extensive amounts of prefab, they are the early adopters of modeling. modeling because it helps their install, not because it's a line in the contract that says they're required to do. Right. So, that's where you got to do it because it helps your install, it helps your prefab, not because your owner said in paragraph 7 that you have to provide a BIM model.
Right. Yeah, you got to be bought in to the process.
Right.
Not just come kicking and screaming for it to be really done right.
Right.
How has Evolve then helped you on that prefab journey?
Well, really what Evolve has done for us is given us that, I call it the smarts that go into the model, the detail, the level of detail, in almost like canned detail, so to speak, that gives the modelers a library of components to build in all in one place. And it adds the smarts to it that really lend itself to prefab assemblies and details and kitting and bills of material that they didn't invent the model, right? They just made the modeling better. They're doing the sophistication into their families and their components that the modeling people have built in for other trades or other parts of the project, whether it's the civil or the steel or whatever. Mm-hmm. What Evolve MEP has really done is kind of built that smarts into the families to allow all the modelers to be working off a common platform, common assemblies, and producing those same consistent standard details that the field guys get to know and understand. Mm-hmm. So when you start creating, setting this up, you create your standard details. You take a look at, okay, if I'm doing underground duct bank installation, I'm going to need reference to steel. I'm going to need dimensions. I'm going to need these things on the prefab drawings that come out of the model, and you create those details. You train your field people on what they mean. They learn that it's a source of truth, and once they know it's a source of truth, then it becomes their tool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Everybody's talking the same language then.
Right.
That's great. So as you're growing and using new technology, embracing new methods, how do you build that consistency in the workflows?
Yeah. So and that's what it's about. That's where some of the efficiency comes, right? It's consistency. Right. The big challenge there is back to how we started. Well, this is how we always done it. So breaking that is the first step. But creating those processes has to be somewhat dynamic, and creating those things have to be dynamic because you have to give the field something that's going to make their life better. Back to your original mission statement, to make their installation better. So when we create these things, we're sending out these details that are coming out of the model that have the prefab information. They're going out to the fab shop, they're getting out to the field, and they're installing them, and we're getting feedback like, hey, if we did this next time or we did that next time, we could do this. And it's back to that interaction with the foreman or the installer and the detailer of evolving those processes as they go. It can't be from the top down. This is how we're going to do it. We lay out the framework. We give everybody the tools, whether it's the iPad with the model and this technology in place, and the BIM modelers with the right BIM software and the right plugins and the Evolve database. And we give them all the tools, and then they have to give us that feedback of what's going to work and what's going to be the most efficient. And it's going to be different from job to job. And that's the challenge, is you have to have a process that's rigid enough or standard enough that you're getting consistent output that is measurable, so you can make sure that you're achieving your goals, but it has to be flexible enough that it can adapt from a hospital project to a power plant project, to a refinery, to a data center. So you have to have some flexibility built in there to be able to allow those things all to happen. And it's a journey. There's no switch that you throw and it just starts happening. It takes trial and error. It takes screwing up a lot of times. It takes rework. It takes throwing something in the garbage because it was built wrong, to learn from those mistakes to make it right. And what I found is when the field guys find those mistakes and they're part of fixing it, they never happen again. They go away. Where if we make a mistake on an assembly and we just keep building it and keep sending it to them over and over and again, and we don't get that feedback from them and they're not part of the solution, we keep doing the same thing over and over again until somebody gives that feedback of making that change.
Yeah. So one of the kind of key foundational elements I think of in what you're talking about is having those open lines of communication flowing between all those different groups, and having the culture of the company that people can bring up different things of, hey, this is working, this is not working, this could be better if we did it this way, and having those lines of communication. How do you encourage that and create those connections to different groups that maybe historically haven't seen eye to eye or had those lines of communication?
Right, because the first time you send prefab assemblies to the 35-year veteran general foreman, the first thing he does is he takes it apart so he can assemble it in the field the right way. I mean, that happens. That has happened multiple times to me in my career. So, but once that, back to what I said, once that interaction between that detailer that is drawing that, or that prefab manager that's building it, and that installer, once that connection is made and they get past, the way we always did it, and they figure out the best way, that's where the good ideas come from. That's where the better widget, the faster widget, the more cost-effective widget comes from. It doesn't come from my office. It doesn't come from my detailers or my engineering team. It comes from the field guys working with those BIM guys to find a better way to do it.
Yeah. Well, what about on the ConTech side of things? How do you encourage, whether it's the field guys or the BIM modelers, or how do they, if they find a technology that excites them or they think might create efficiencies, how do they then communicate that and then push it up the chain to find the right person that has the maybe the buying power or the decision-making power?
Yeah, I mean, it's some of it is cultural, right? You have to have a culture where you're encouraging your people to find a better way. It's a big challenge because there's so much out there, right? There's so much ConTech out there right now. It's, I said it was software overload, so to speak. Yeah. And as an executive, you're constantly saying no to these things. We already have something, or you just implement a payroll solution, and then there's a new payroll solution that comes out, and everyone, the first thing that happens is someone likes a new payroll solution and they bring it in there, and you got to tell them no, because we just invested all this money in this other solution,
right?
And you can't adopt everything. Not everything works. Not everything makes sense for, you got the 80-20 rule. It's usually 80-20. It's very rarely 100%. 80-20.
Right.
80% of the people are going to like it. 20% of the people aren't. It's not going to fit. They're going to be some kind of workaround, and you got to figure out a way to live with that. But things like even Bluebeam, to be perfectly honest, Bluebeam or Evolve or any of these tools that were the high fives when you leave the room, I'm going to say they were probably shot down 1 or 2 times before they actually got to the person that made the decision that said, let's implement it. I can guarantee they got shot down multiple times. Somebody's seen it. Somebody tried it. They said, man, this is the new thing. This is great. Let's do it. And somewhere in that management chain, it just got nixed. And
right,
getting that, whoever's championing it, getting that person to find another avenue, or to find a way to sell it better, or whatever, however he's got to do it within the organization to make it happen, is a challenge. And it all comes down to the culture. I know in my company at Fisk, we have a culture where there's no layer, there's no chain of custody or chain of command, excuse me, so to speak, that says, hey, if you're a foreman, you can only talk to the general foreman, and the general foreman can talk to the superintendent. The superintendent will talk to the PM will talk to and by the time a good idea in the field gets to me, it's been through 10 people, and it's like the string and can game where you're talking right. Yeah. right. So it doesn't translate well. So
right.
Embracing that culture where as an executive, you got to be curious enough to talk to the people that are in the field to find out what is a pain point or what we could do better. You got to ask them, are you getting what you need? Are you hey, have you thought of a better way to do this? Is there something we could do to make this better? Or what would make your day easier? Little questions, that curiosity from the executive level down to that level within the organization. You never know what's going to come out of their mouth. I mean, 99 bad ideas and one good one is the one good one's the only one you count, right? The other ones, you're only out your time to listen to them. But really establishing that culture of curiosity at the executive level, curiosity at the middle management level of what will make your people more efficient and what will make it more successful will lead to, profit at some point in your organization.
Yeah, for sure. I love that curiosity mentality, and circling back on something that you said a little bit ago with having the willingness to try something and being okay if it doesn't turn out exactly the way you want it and learn from that. I think that mindset is huge, and it's so important. I see it popping up more prevalent in construction, but it's a changing mindset for sure from how generally construction used to have, so I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I was at a meeting a couple weeks ago with a bunch of other construction executives, and it was a cocktail hour conversation. We were talking about technology and software overload, and listening to some of these guys talk, they're all kind of bragging about all our guys have iPads and all our guys have tablet computers and all our guys have this, and I'm like, well, awesome. What do they use it for? And I just get this blank look. Like they had no idea what they use it for. Well, email and they can look stuff up and they can take pictures. We're pretty sure that they do their time on there. Not, maybe they do, maybe they don't. But just that curiosity of, okay, we spent millions of dollars on hardware. What are we doing with it?
Right.
What's it being used for? What's the utilization? If you had a pickup truck that you bought for a project and it sat in the parking lot 99% of the time, you would probably not keep that pickup truck. More than likely, you would get rid of the pickup truck from that job site and you would rent one when you needed it, or you would find another way to do whatever that truck was doing. The same kind of applies for the IT hardware we have. If they're not using it effectively, why are we buying it? And then we forget that once you got the initial investment of the hardware and the network and the infrastructure, you still have to have the software tools for them to be productive on those pieces of equipment.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's really being well thought out with the plan, being agile enough to change it when you need to tweak it, but being well thought out before you roll something out of how you're actually going to use it.
Right.
Nice. Well, how do people get a hold of you and find out more about what you guys are doing at Fisk?
Obviously, check out our website, www.fiskcorp.com. Well, we're on LinkedIn. We try to share a lot of that stuff on LinkedIn. We're on Instagram. We're kind of new to the social media thing, as again, you try things and they don't work, and then you figure out, our first trial was we don't need to be online. It doesn't matter. But found that being online is a great recruiting tool. Talk about finding those younger people. It's a great way to, and really back to the way we started. Social media is a way for us to share some of the cool stuff that we build. We build really cool stuff, and I don't care if you're building Amazon's or automotive manufacturing plants or battery manufacturing plants or solar farms, whatever it is, they're cool and they get the attention of people, and sharing that stuff is a great way for contractors to attract people to it. Make it cool, make it sexy, make it something that they want to do. So I encourage everybody that is out there to, even if it's on your personal LinkedIn page or whatever, to share that stuff, get it out there. Let everybody know the cool stuff you're doing so you can help us attract more people into the industry.
Yeah. Amen. And props to you guys for having social accounts and a webpage. It's always a little shocking to me on how many construction companies out there that don't have any online presence at all. And I mean, that's the way of the world now. I think you got to be online.
Right. Well, it's easy to do the analysis and see no return on investment. Well, my customers aren't going to go to my webpage. They know who I am, or they're when they're looking for somebody to build a Amazon center for them, they're not going to go on the web and look for for a contractor. But that's not the return on investment. That's an added benefit, is to attract customers. The real benefit of having social media and the webpage is to attract talent.
Yeah.
Young and old, being out there, being able for them to be able to research you, to see the things you're doing, to interact online. If I looked at who follows our LinkedIn page and our social media accounts, 80% of them are people that work for either other trades or other general contractors or other electrical contractors, people that are in the industry, which isn't who I think you would be marketing to. My first thought is you're marketing to other customers, but you're not. You're marketing to your peers and to your other tradesmen or your other trade organizations. They're the ones that are looking at what other companies are doing and attracting people that way.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Well, last question for you. What does innovation mean to you?
Innovation, to me, innovation is curiosity, constantly being able to think of how or why something is happening. So if you think about how or why something is happening, it probably is going to lead you to an alternate way to do it. Maybe a better way, maybe it's not a better way, but to innovate, you have to be curious. You have to be willing to think about outside the box, about a different way to do it without, just continue to do the same thing because you've done it over and over again. And I think if you talk to a lot of people about innovation, they're going to have a different definition based on their role or their level in the organization. And when you get to an executive level or an ownership level, innovation, I'm not the guy finding the best way anymore to do it. I'm the guy asking the questions to get somebody else to figure out the best way, or embracing their idea or giving them a shot to try their idea out within the organization. And I think that's a lesson that more business executives or construction business owners and construction executives could learn from, is that curiosity will lead to the innovation in their organization. And that's something that comes, that whether that's the Amazon way or, the Kaizen, manufacturing way of finding a better way to do it, or the lean manufacturing way, whatever way you want to say that you got to that, point of saying curiosity is a thing. They all have the same principle. It's all based on some type of curiosity or some type of innovation to try a different way to do it, and being okay with failing if it doesn't work out the first time or the second time or the 100th time.
Yeah. Well, that's a great way to end it right there. This was great. Thanks so much, Cory.
Okay. Thanks for having me.